And welcome back to another episode of the Checkers or Wreckers podcast, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, as always, Carter Leonard. It will once again be me this week, ladies and gentlemen. This is episode 27, and this is a very anticipated episode because, ladies and gentlemen, this is the last podcast episode before we reach the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs. Man, it feels like the season has just blown completely by, man. It's been one hell of a season. We have had a lot of the top dogs winning, but we also have had some underdog wins like Chris Buescher, Michael McDowell, and also referring back to the top dogs like Kyle Busch, William Byron, Kyle Larson, and Martin Truex Jr., just to name a few. But as of right now, we still have one more race before the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs kick off in September, and that is Daytona this upcoming weekend. But we will get to more of that into this episode. But first, we will start with, as always, the weekend recap. Last weekend, NASCAR made its annual trip to Watkins Glen International in upstate New York with both the Xfinity and the Cup Series. The Xfinity Series race had a pretty interesting finish regarding two of NASCAR's youngest and brightest stars. One being in the Cup Series, just running for part-time races in Xfinity for his grandfather's team. The other driver who has won a bunch of ARCA races in the past and still trying to get himself to be a championship contender in the Xfinity Series. And let's not also forget, they fistfighted one another at Martinsville last year. It was between Ty Gibbs and Sam Mayer for the finish of the Xfinity Series race, and it ended up being Sam Mayer coming out on top after getting into it with Ty Gibbs on the racetrack, mainly on the final restart where he got into Ty Gibbs from behind and spun him out going into the first turn. Ty Gibbs wasn't very happy about it, and I don't think that he was really too upset about it because, well, according to him, he's racing on Sundays. So Sam Mayer picks up his second career win in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Second career win on a road course too, because his first career win did come at Road America earlier this year in July. So Sam Mayer has been sneaky quiet on road courses, I must say. Just what a race it was for the Xfinity Series. Ty Gibbs even jabbing at Sam Mayer a little bit in his post-race interview. It's cool that he got his second win, but I wish I could have gotten my 13th. Say what you want about it, that was a pretty nice comeback. And even if you don't like Ty Gibbs, it's understandable. So congratulations to Sam Mayer and the Junior Motorsports #1 team as they pick up their second win of the year. 3 races, I should say, before the Xfinity Series heads into their playoffs. Now we get to the Cup race on Sunday, ladies and gentlemen. And typically when you go to Watkins Glen for every year for the Cup Series, there's always something memorable that happens in each and every Cup Series race. There's always something that goes on, always something that pops off. And, we look back on those Watkins Glen races and we think to ourselves, wow, those were pretty good races. This one on Sunday, I really can't say the same. Again, we have already expressed our thoughts about the next gen car as of right now, how it's a solid race car, but there needs a lot to be done. There's a lot that needs to be done, But, and road courses is definitely one of them. As we saw on Sunday, while there wasn't any struggling to pass, there was definitely some interesting moments to say. I mean, not too chaotically interesting, but it was a pretty meh and dull race. If you were to give me a rating on this race on a scale from 1 to 10, I would give it a 6.5. That's at least like a D minus. Just not a very excited race, but it led to 2 things regarding the playoffs. William Byron ended up picking up his 5th win of the season for 2023 and his first ever career win on a road course. So 8 out of William Byron's 9 career wins have come at different racetracks. The only time where he's repeated at a racetrack with a win was when he won at Atlanta this year, albeit cut short due to rain. So William Byron picks up his 5th win of the year. He obviously continues his playoff points lead. I don't know if he's still the regular season points leader. It's a battle between him and Martin Truex Jr. as of right now, as Martin Truex Jr. is only 22 points away from clinching the 2023 regular season championship. And he has to score those 22 points at Daytona of all places. Which, if you're a Martin Truex Jr. fan, you either don't like super speedway racing because of Truex's luck in the past, or whatever the case may be. But going back to William Byron for a second, it was a dominating performance by the 24 team. William Byron and Rudy Fugle doing William Byron and Rudy Fugle things, and it led them to another victory this season. This was the breakout season for William Byron that we have all hoped for. We have mentioned it upon numerous times on this show so far this year, and he just continues to build on that. So Clint Bowyer even predicted it this year after William Byron's second win at Phoenix, when he went back-to-back at both Las Vegas and Phoenix, that William Byron has the capability of going and winning 6 to 8 races this year. Well, so far, William Byron has 5 wins, and it looks like that he might surpass that and might get around 7 to 8 wins this year, and maybe, just maybe, walk away with the title at year's end. But it's the playoffs. Anything can happen, and we will see what happens to him in the playoffs. So, congrats to William Byron on winning Watkins Glen, the first road course win of his career, and the 9th win of his Cup Series career. With that all being said, ladies and gentlemen, that'll do it for the weekend recap of Watkins Glen. I know it wasn't a whole lot to talk about, but, that's how it is sometimes. You either get really, really exciting race weekends, or you get some dull moments here and there. So and I accidentally knocked my pop filter out of the way as soon as I was looking through my phone notes. So let's move on to some pop culture news, if you want to call it, regarding NASCAR. And last week we discussed that NASCAR and Netflix are planning to land a deal to make a documentary series. Well, that deal has officially come, as NASCAR and Netflix have landed a deal to make a documentary regarding the 2023 Cup Series playoffs, which will come out in early the spring of 2024. This is obviously huge in a lot of ways, because obviously Netflix is one of the biggest, if not the biggest movie/TV show streaming site in all the world. And of course, when it comes to motorsports, they're obviously famous for Formula One Drive to Survive. So with them getting NASCAR and possibly getting the Drive, see, here's how I think this should play out. If I'm looking at this show from a Netflix standpoint, do whatever you do to Drive to Survive, like the production, the cinematography, all that stuff, right? Please incorporate that into this documentary. Please. I beg of you, because that would be every NASCAR fan's dream right there, because NASCAR for a while has been trying to capture that Drive to Survive audience, because that's how really F1 has captured their popularity in America so far, how it continues and rises to become a very popular motorsport in America. Personally, I always think that NASCAR is going to be the number one motorsport in America, but, I don't know if that's just the bias in me or something like that, but, you get what I'm saying. But, yeah, so this is a big deal. No further details on what the documentary will be called or how it will be produced or, that or this, and that. But, yeah, this is obviously very big. Adam Stern reported it, obviously, earlier this week. So it was very nice to see that NASCAR and Netflix got this deal done, and we could possibly see a Drive to Survive type of show, but it's with the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs. But with that all being said, ladies and gentlemen, we move on to our next topic of the show, as we're already blowing by this, man. This is crazy. So We are here to talk about silly season, ladies and gentlemen, and this isn't just no ordinary silly season rumor at all. No, this is actually a very, very big bombshell that was reported by Catchfence.com, and it's reporting that 2311 Racing executives have been in contact or had a meeting with at Michigan International Speedway with Ford. Yeah, I'm not making this up either. There is a legit possibility that 2311 Racing, the team that currently the team that currently fields Toyotas in the NASCAR Cup Series, could be fielding Ford Mustangs within next year. Now, why is this a possibility, and why is this going to happen? Why might this happen, I should ask? Well, you may ask yourself, well, why would Denny switch to Ford? Doesn't he have a contract ready for Joe Gibbs Racing? He actually does. It is reported that Joe Gibbs Racing and Denny Hamlin do have that contract ready for him to stay at Joe Gibbs Racing till possibly the time he retires. We don't know how long that extension will be, and I would like to assume that FedEx, whose contract is also up with Joe Gibbs Racing, will probably get re-signed as well along with that deal. But, however, the reason why the deal isn't officially official yet, that being the Hamlin and Joe Gibbs Racing contract extension, is simply because of 2311's deal with Toyota. Yeah, their deal with Toyota is up after this year. And their alliance with Joe Gibbs Racing, which is also another contract, is also up after this year. So until those deals get done, which we're coming down to the end of the season, we're really approaching playoff season, we're literally about to enter the month of September at this point, we do not know how long this is going to take. But when that happens, Denny Hamlin will stay at Joe Gibbs Racing. Now, why Ford exactly? Why is there a possibility that 2311 Racing might go to Ford? Well, there's another team involved with this, and that is Stewart-Haas Racing. Let me tell you why. According to the Catchfence.com with their article as well, is that there is potentially a rumor out there saying that Stewart-Haas Racing is looking to sell 2 out of its 4 Cup Series charters. Currently, Stewart-Haas Racing is a 4-car team with the 4, the 10, the 14, and the 41, and those drivers being Kevin Harvick for the time being, Aric Almirola for the time being, Chase Briscoe, and Ryan Preece. And so if I had to assume of what charters are possibly going to be sold, I would assume it's the 10 cars and the 41 cars, because Josh Berry just got there at Stewart-Haas Racing. I don't know why they would sell the 4-car charter. That doesn't make any sense. They just signed him. And obviously Chase Briscoe in the 14 is Stewart-Haas Racing's long-term guy since 2021, and he will continue to be that way until he possibly, either retires with that team or he leaves and goes somewhere else. I'm sure Tony Stewart will want to keep him. But this is obviously big news if this turns out to be the case, because we've all seen how big the charter prices are as of right now, close to up to $30 million. Well, according to this article, it's stating that these 2 charters could be worth both either $40 to $50 million. Yeah, just when you thought charters couldn't get possibly more expensive, you thought wrong. And if I had to assume that, well, let me backtrack for a second. So there's a possibility that 2311 Racing could be involved with this whole charter deal with Stewart-Haas Racing, because I'm sure, and we all know it, that 2311 Racing wants to eventually expand to a 3, possibly, if you're lucky, 4-car organization. I'm sure Denny Hamlin has that in the cards for him later on down the line, and I'm sure he wants a 3rd charter with a 3rd full-time driver. Now, who would be that 3rd full-time driver, you might ask? Well, there are rumors saying that there's been theories out there, I should say, that Denny Hamlin could possibly leave Joe Gibbs Racing, take the 11 with him, the number 11, and drive for his own team. That has been the fan favorite theory as of late. Or he might not take the number, but he still wants to go drive for his own team. So that has been the fan favorite theory for a while, and I could see why it could possibly come true. Do I think it's going to happen? Time will tell, because as of right now, I don't know. But obviously, you know, where was I? Man, I lost my train of thought. But he might want to go and drive for his own team, but that will require 2 charters. Well, I have a theory for you guys out there, and one theory involves another Ford driver, and that is actually Zane Smith. There's also been rumors. I know I keep saying the word rumors a lot because this is a big story. I don't think a lot of people understand how big of a story that this might possibly be. There are rumors out there that 2311 Racing executives, I would assume it's probably their president, or, if we're stretching a bit, maybe Denny Hamlin, that they want Zane Smith to drive one of their cars if they switch to Ford for 2024. I would say that would be a great move on 2311 Racing's part. Obviously, Zane Smith is no doubt, in everybody's mind, the best prospect in the NASCAR garage as of right now. And, it would be an absolute win for them to get Zane Smith on their team. Now, here's my theory. If they were to get Zane Smith, they would have to sacrifice someone for it. That means they would have to tell one of their drivers, hey, go somewhere else, this, and that. I have a theory for you guys. If this Ford deal does happen, I am predicting, and you could call me crazy all you want, and you could say, well, you're delusional, this, and that. You could say whatever you want. I believe that if 2311 Racing goes to Ford and Denny Hamlin gets a third charter, he and Zane Smith and Bubba Wallace are going to be on that team, while Toyota keeps Tyler Reddick and puts him over at Joe Gibbs Racing. You can't say that's not a good theory, because let's be real. If you're Toyota or TRD, you do not want to lose a potential generational talent in Tyler Reddick. You just got him too for 2311 Racing. You literally stole him right underneath Richard Childress's shoes, stole him away from Chevy. You can't give up on him after 1 year, right? So, and a lot of people are going to be like, oh, what about John Hunter Nemechek, this, and that. Yeah, John Hunter Nemechek is a good driver, but here's the thing, though. I think Tyler Reddick is just a little bit more raw than him. Obviously, this isn't the season that Reddick has been wanting. There's been some bright spots here and there. Now, like I've said before about Reddick and the 45 team, they have had speed this year. Race-winning speed, top 5, top 10 speed. It's just you make mistakes at very crucial times, and it costs you good finish. Michigan, Richmond, for example. Richmond in the summer race, if you want me to be specific. But, yeah, I mean, that would be an absolute win for Toyota just to keep Tyler Reddick. I think they could possibly do that. I don't think that they want to give up on him that easy. But imagine a 2311 Racing team with both Bubba Wallace, who is a very serviceable driver. He would once again be back in the Ford because he used to drive Fords for when he was filling in for Eric Almirola at Richard Petty Motorsports, which is now Legacy Motor Club. And then you have Denny Hamlin, who I would assume would drive I would assume Denny Hamlin would drive the new number for the team, whether it be the 11 or, if we're going in numerical order, the 67. And then you have Zane Smith potentially driving the 45 car. This is a scenario that could very well play out. Or this might all just be hype up, and this might be Denny Hamlin just digging for leverage for Toyota to say, hey, get this 2311 Racing deal done now, please. I'm actually asking you to get this done, or I will do this. Now, where would Denny Hamlin get the money to acquire one of those charters? I'm not sure. Maybe it's that Charlotte Hornet money, possibly. Hey, Michael Jordan did sell the Hornets and got a good amount of money out of it. So, find the right sponsors, everything falls into place. Higher risk may equal high reward. Who knows? But what do I think will possibly happen? So I just listed. So here's the two scenarios. There's a scenario I just listed where Reddick goes to JGR and Zane Smith and Denny Hamlin both drive for 23XI Racing in Fords. Or this is all just hype up, and 23XI Racing and Toyota sign an exclusive extension, and Denny Hamlin stays at JGR, and so does 23XI Racing stay at Toyota. That's my hypothesis. That's my hypothetical scenarios. Though either one of those are going to happen, in my opinion, unless if 23XI Racing wants to keep Tyler Reddick. I don't know where Denny Hamlin would drive for per se. Maybe Stewart-Haas Racing, but at the same time, I don't know if you want to take that over Joe Gibbs Racing. So if you're Denny Hamlin and you're looking at Toyota President David Wilson, you have to say, hey, let's get this thing going and let's get this finished and let's get this done now. So please and thank you. But let me know what you guys think will happen in 23XI Racing. I would love to know your guys' opinions on it in the comment section below. Speaking of Stewart-Haas Racing, Smithfield announces that it is likely that they will not return to the SHR team next year. That being the main and primary sponsor for Aric Almirola, who has been with him pretty much his entire career, from his Richard Petty Motorsports days to his potential final days at Stewart-Haas Racing. Now, Aric Almirola is in a contract year where his deal is up at the end of the season. Reminder that he was supposed to retire at the end of last season. Decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to stick around for another year and let's see what happens. He decides to stay for another year and actually has a 2-year deal, which is a full year this year, but an option year to return for 2024. But it looks like that option deal is probably not going to happen if your main sponsor, who really backs that team majority of the time, is threatening to leave. Now, it's likely that if Smithfield is going to leave Stewart-Haas Racing, which there's a good chance it will, then that will most likely mean that Aric Almirola will not return to the 10 car or even the Cup Series. It will most likely be him retiring at the end of this year. So who do they go after? Do they go? I'm sure Stewart-Haas Racing is in the Zane Smith sweepstakes because, you know, every day it seems like Zane Smith is. We all know that Zane Smith is going to be going racing on Sundays next year, but just for who exactly? Front Row Motorsports was a possibility. That's out of the window. Stewart-Haas Racing has always been a possibility considering that he's a Ford driver and he's gaining some Ford experience, and Stewart-Haas Racing needs a full and complete rebuild. And, you know, he could potentially be one of the guys, along with Josh Berry, to join him in the rebuild. And then you have the new rumor, 23XI Racing. That's another opportunity you can go to. Now, and then you remember Front Row Motorsports and Ford coming out saying that he is allowed to explore other options. Well, those are other options. I mean, Stewart-Haas and 23XI, if they indeed do switch to Ford. But is it just those two, or what else does he mean by other options? A potential manufacturer switch? I don't know if I don't know if Ford wants to let go of him that easy. I highly doubt that. But, you know, other options, when they mean other options, you know, they didn't really specify. So that's going to be a very interesting outlook on, you know, what Zane Smith is going to possibly do. So who gets the 10 car next year? I would not be surprised if the lead candidate is Zane Smith. You know, the top NASCAR prospect, also the top Ford prospect. Stewart-Haas Racing drives for Ford. You know, Zane Smith drives for Ford. Tony Stewart needs a rebuild. You know, you put all those together, it might work. You know, depending on if Zane Smith can actually make the team better. And, you know, we'll see what happens there. And, oh, speaking of Ford when it comes to Stewart-Haas Racing, I forgot to mention this, is that there are rumors that Tony Stewart is not happy with Ford. Well, let me just say that those aren't new rumors, but it's let's just say it's now spiraling out of control now. And what I mean by that is that we might see a potential manufacturer switch for Stewart-Haas Racing sooner than we think. And that's another reason why the whole selling the two charters thing, might potentially happen because, you know, Stewart-Haas Racing feels like that they might have too many cars and just want to downsize because the team is completely underperforming right now. But they're not really getting a whole lot of Ford help right now, as Team Penske, they're doing their things, and RFK is just outrunning them every single week. Like, it's amazing how good RFK Racing is. Hell, even Ferrari Motorsports is outrunning them. Like, Jesus Christ, like, Stewart-Haas Racing went from being a top tier team in the NASCAR Cup Series to just being fallen from grace. Like, it's honestly quite fascinating, if you ask me. But yeah, that'll do it for the Smithfield announces that they will not return to Stewart-Haas next year, possibility, and I gave my hypothetical on who would probably get the 10 car. If cards do fall into place for him, I would think that Zane Smith is the leading candidate. Now we go from some lighthearted news to some unfortunate news regarding the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. GMS Racing, a multi-time Truck Series Championship organization, announces that they will be shutting down at the end of the 2023 season. Obviously, both GMS Racing and Legacy Motor Club are co-owned by Maury Gallagher. And as we all know, Legacy Motor Club is making the switch to Toyota next year, and we all question if GMS Racing would potentially do the same. That turned out to not be the case, as GMS Racing announces that they will be shutting down at the end of the year. So currently, as of right now, GMS Racing has 3 full-time drivers. You have the 23 truck of Grant Enfinger, who is currently looking to win his first ever Truck Series championship this year, trying to send out GMS Racing on one last hurrah. You have Rajah Caruth, who's had glimpses of potential, who has had some good runs here and there, but just does not have the luck for it. And then you have Fox Sports 1's favorite driver, and maybe Michael Waltrip's favorite driver, Daniel Dye. Which, by the way, speaking of Daniel Dye, in a press release regarding the GMS Racing shutdown, Daniel Dye's PR team announces that Daniel Dye has already signed a contract to drive for a Truck Series team in 2024. Who that team might be is yet to be seen. We will know later on down the line. So Daniel Dye is not going anywhere, and he will most likely race full time in the Truck Series next year. But as for Grant Enfinger, let me backtrack. But as for Grant Enfinger and Rajah Caruth, both kind of polar opposite drivers. You have Grant Enfinger, a very solid veteran, a race-winning driver. And then you have Rajah Caruth, a young rookie in the Truck Series this year who has tons of potential and, could be, if he does really well, a potential superstar in the sport. Two polar opposite drivers. Those drivers are without a ride next year. I would assume that Grant Enfinger is most likely going to stay in trucks one way or another next year. I don't know if it's going to be with a top contending team or with a mid to low pack team per se, but who knows. Me personally, I think ThorSport Racing would be a great fit for him because ThorSport Racing knows how to win championships, and I think if Grant Enfinger wants his best shot, which he already has a good shot right now with GMS Racing, he could go back to ThorSport Racing and compete for a title. So, it would be nice to see a reunion with ThorSport, but who knows. As for Rajah Caruth, I don't know what options he has right now. There's Alpha Prime, which is, the Xfinity Series team that has Jeffrey Earnhardt, and Rajah Caruth does part-time starts with them in the 45, posting some mixed results and some top 20 finishes, but I don't really know if rushing him to the Xfinity Series, regardless if it's a top team or not, is the best decision. Because if me personally, I would want Raja to stay another year in the trucks. I know I've had my opinions on the truck series before on how it's not the best development series, but at the same time, you know, I don't think rushing him up is going to be a good idea either. So you're just going to be kind of stuck there per se. So that's the way I see it, if I'm being real. So we'll see, how that happens. But yeah, this is sad for GMS Racing. A lot of people I've seen on social media are already pointing the finger at Jimmy Johnson, saying, "Thanks, Jimmy. You really have ran this organization to the ground." Now, listen. I know we're all upset that GMS Racing is going to be leaving. I've, seen GMS Racing for pretty much a good decade now. Their last Truck Series championship as of this current point was Sheldon Creed in 2020, where he went completely off that year, which, that turned me into somewhat of a Sheldon Creed fan. But also, if GMS Racing were to switch to Toyota next year, you have to understand that they were not going to be the top Toyota truck team. Reminder, Tricon Garage has the main Toyota truck support now ever since Kyle Busch Motorsports went over to Chevy. So, those trucks at Tricon Garage are getting the full Toyota treatment. So GMS Racing was just going to be looked at as an afterthought, and just it wasn't a good idea per se. So it just wasn't a good idea for them. So don't think that this is Jimmy Johnson just wants to do this, he's greedy, which Jimmy Johnson is the least greediest person that I would know on this planet. Or, obviously I don't know him personally, but you could just tell from his personality. But a lot of people have to understand, would that if they were to switch and not get the full treatment or help that they need, how is that going to make them a contending team? And obviously, their main guys were going to stay. Both Raja and Daniel Dye are both contracted Chevy development drivers. Grant Enfinger, I don't think would have had a problem with staying per se. I don't really think that he's really linked to one specific manufacturer, because he's driven for a lot. Driven Toyota, he's driven Ford, he's driven Chevy now. So I don't think it would have been a problem for Grant Enfinger. But yeah, 2/3 of your team would have not been returning. You would have had to replace them with someone else. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. So hopefully GMS Racing can go out on one last hurrah, make it to the championship four with Grant Enfinger, and GMS Racing can walk out as champions one final time. That would be a storybook ending at Phoenix so far, and they have the potential to do it. They're in the playoffs as of right now. So, yeah, let's just see what happens, ladies and gentlemen. But, yeah, that'll do it for the GMS Racing shutting down portion of this episode, ladies and gentlemen. I was very sad when, they're announcing this, because I would have considered them not necessarily the Hendrick Motorsports of the Truck Series, but the main Chevy team of the Truck Series, because that's where basically all the main Chevy development drivers go. Sheldon Creed, obviously, big Chevy development driver, and now he's with RCR in the Xfinity Series. That was a GMS Racing product right there. So, yeah. That's all I really have to say. Now, moving on to our next topic, and it's regards NASCAR's media rights deal. We have some new updates regarding some competitors in, for a potential contract for broadcast of races 2025 and beyond. And according to Adam Stern, Amazon.com and Warner Bros. Discovery are competing to broadcast a new package of NASCAR races, with the league trying to boost its overall revenue by bringing in more media partners. And that is from Business Insider Business Journal. I think that's what his Sports Business Journal. I am so sorry, Adam Stern, if you're watching. I got your company screwed up, man. I am so sorry. But this is big because this throws another hat into the ring of potential TV networks that want to broadcast NASCAR races. But it's not a new broadcasting partner like the other names that are thrown in there. Warner Bros. Discovery, also known as NASCAR on TNT. Everybody remembers NASCAR on TNT when they hosted their stretch of summer races from June all the way to late July until the Brickyard 400 happened, which I believe ESPN would take over from there on out. So NASCAR is looking to potentially do once again, a summer stretch of races like they did back in the early to mid 2000s. And, TNT might gladly do the honors again. Obviously, TNT has been good in a good amount of sports, mainly the NBA. Obviously, I'm a big basketball guy myself, and I love watching inside the NBA with Charles, Kenny, Shaq, and Ernie. Just watching them go at each other during halftime shows is absolutely hilarious as all hell. But this would be big for NASCAR if they could get this, if they could get TNT back on board, simply because, I let me go over to Amazon real quick. I'll get back to TNT in a second, but Amazon obviously, I think would have been. I think Amazon is another good option, mainly because of brand recognition. Obviously, we all know how big of a company Amazon is. They are a multi-billion-dollar company. I mean, it's, obviously nothing new. So, I mean, whatever they would do, I'm sure fans wouldn't mind at all because, maybe they can make something that's really accessible to fans. A lot of people are still on cable TV, unfortunately, but, with streaming becoming the new norm, they would implement that into this contract. I don't know if TNT would do the same necessarily. I highly doubt that, but you never know. The chances are low, but they're never zero. Is what I always like to say. So yeah, this was a decent amount of news regarding the next media rights deal, which we still don't know what's going on. I mean, we already know who's broadcasting Xfinity Series races from 2025 and beyond, but as for the main Cup Series, I'm sure Fox and NBC do want to renew their contracts, and I'm sure new names in there, like Amazon, like TNT, potentially ESPN, or some other network that we haven't heard of yet that is interested, wants to throw their hat in the ring in the next contract. So I'm sure by the end of the year we will know when those will come out, and we will see where this takes us in the future of our sport. Now, ladies and gentlemen, on to our next topic, and it is regarding who gets the final spot into the playoffs. Oh boy, ladies and gentlemen, it has been a tight battle in the playoffs for the last several weeks. Now, basically the entire top 11, top 12 before Watkins Glen had already secured their spots either off of winning a race or points wise. So, the main contenders are up there, this and that, and then you have the other teams up there looking for a playoff spot. Now, with William Byron, as I mentioned earlier that he won at Watkins Glen, it officially locked in Brad Keselowski and Kevin Harvick into the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs. So that means one spot is remaining. Ladies and gentlemen, one spot left. That being the 16th and final spot, which is being occupied by Bubba Wallace, who is currently 32 points above the cut line, ahead of current Rookie of the Year Ty Gibbs, who is 32 points below the cut line. And now we are going to a track where all bets are off. All the drivers that have wins or are on points, they're safe. Obviously they don't want to wreck. They don't want to. They have nothing left to. They have nothing to lose in this race. Obviously, considering that they're locked in. But as for Bubba Wallace and other drivers below the cut line, they do. They have a lot left to lose. And obviously, the one being Chase Elliott, which Chase Elliott did not have a good showing at Watkins Glen. While he was somewhat quick, there was a point where Chase Elliott ran out of fuel. Now, running out of fuel, especially on a road course, is not something that you need to happen. Especially when you're fighting for a playoff spot after missing some time due to an injury and missing one race due to doing something stupid, which ended up getting you a suspension. Now, me and the Checkers or Wreckers podcast team have examined the playoffs very closely the past few weeks because it's been a tight battle. It's really been it's been a very interesting battle. This is like one of the few, times where I can remember it being this intense. Like, it's not really earth shattering or, anything like that. But at the same time, playoff spots are very, very, very valuable. And Bubba Wallace and Ty Gibbs and other drivers below the cut line know this. So as of right now, with Bubba Wallace being the safest driver as of right now, we don't know how Daytona is going to play off. So here's how the playoff standings look like this below the cut line. You have Ty Gibbs in 17th, 32 points outside the cut line. You have Daniel Suarez, 43 points outside the cut line. AJ Allmendinger, 19th, negative 72 points outside the cut line. Alex Bowman, 96 points out the cut line. And then you have the most popular driver of them all, Chase Elliott, at negative 101 points below the cut line. It's honestly quite fascinating how Chase Elliott has not cracked the top 20 in points since his stretch of returning. And, quite frankly, Watkins Glen last weekend was Chase Elliott's best chance to get himself locked into the playoffs. But that turned out not to be the case. And quite frankly, it's a shame. But that could all change this weekend. Chase Elliott could actually go out and win this race and still make it in. He could beat Bubba Wallace in this points battle. He could beat guys like Ty Gibbs, Daniel Suarez, AJ Allmendinger, and his own teammate Alex Bowman. And it's even weirder too because it's going to be the weirdest thing thinking that half of Hendrick Motorsports. I do not know why Comcast is calling me on my phone. Thank you for interrupting my podcast. I apologize. So, as I was saying, it's very funny to me how it could potentially happen that both Hendrick Motorsports cars could miss the Cup Series playoffs. Obviously, Kyle Larson and William Byron, they have their wins. They're already locked in. But Alex Bowman, and Chase Elliott, they are not safe at all. Where typically in a normal season around this point, they would either have a win or two and be locked in along with their teammates. That is not the case. Both drivers have missed some time due to injury. Chase Elliott obviously got suspended. I'm beating a dead horse at this point, but you get the whole idea. And now, I'm not saying Chase Elliott is a bad plate racer, but, you don't know who the big one's going to collect. The big one can strike at any time. You could either be really, really lucky and make it through, or you could have the shittiest upon shittiest of luck and just completely total your car. Simple as that. As of right now, ladies and gentlemen, I hate it for the Chase Elliott fans out there. You guys have had a pretty shitty season. It has been, it can't get much worse, can it? Right? Well, I'm not going to speak that into existence per se, but, Man, it's been one hit across the face after another. Like it has just been, it's hell for Chase Elliott fans out there. It is just complete hell. And I'm sorry, guys, but it looks like you aren't gonna make the playoffs this year. I'm sorry. I mean that injury, that snowboarding injury, before the third race of the season at Las Vegas, it completely messed everything up for Chase Elliott. I'm not saying the suspension helped him either after he right hooked Denny Hamlin, but man, trying to get all those points back is not an easy task. I understand that back in um, 2015, when Kyle Busch broke his leg and foot, he had to make up all those points, but it was under different circumstances too because only the top 30 in points at the time. Now, this was the rules circa 2015 that only the top 30 in points could get into the playoffs. Now, any driver inside any of the drivers that are racing full time in the Cup Series, no matter, you could be like 35th in the standings right now. I mean, you could be running like shit. You have a chance to make the playoffs. Like, it's crazy to think about that. But yeah, unless Chase Elliott pulls out some, rabbit out of his hat and just completely goes out and shows off at Daytona, then, although this is the very, very last chance, in my opinion, Chase Elliott's last chance came at Watkins Glen because, he's familiar with that track. He's familiar with Victory Lane, this, and that. And, it's just, you would think that everything would go right for him at that that day, but no, that's no, that's no, that's it's not the case. It's not the case. So that'll do it for who I think. Now, oh, by the way, I didn't even give who I think could make the playoffs. Now, I'm only going to circle between two drivers, and that being, as of right now, because they are the two closest when it comes to points, that being Bubba Wallace and Ty Gibbs. You have Bubba Wallace, who has a chance to make his first ever playoff appearance, by the way, because he's been that somewhat consistent off of points. And then you have Ty Gibbs, who has had a very respectable rookie campaign. He's had some really good runs here and there, and he's on the outside looking in. He's, there's a chance that Ty Gibbs could make the playoffs in his very first season in the NASCAR Cup Series. Now, who do I think will make the playoffs? I think that someone is going to go home happy after Saturday night's race at Daytona, and I think that happy fellow is going to be Michael Jordan and Bubba Wallace. I know that's two people, but you get what I'm saying. As much as I am a Ty Gibbs fan, I just don't know if he's going to be able to escape the carnage and just completely, go out and just run very well, get a top 10 finish, because I'm not saying I don't know, I wouldn't consider him a bad plate racer, but, there's way better out there. I think, Bubba Wallace, obviously, definitely a better super speedway racer. But I think that Bubba Wallace is going to somehow hang on, avoid the chaos, and get it done at Daytona and get himself into the playoffs. So that's what I think is going to happen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are wrapping up this show for tonight. Now, by the time you are watching this, the Xfinity Series race is possibly starting. This is a pre-recorded episode of the Checkers Wreckers podcast, so this was recorded yesterday. So, in case you were wondering, oh my God, he's late to the race, this, and that, the race is about to start. Trust me, I had all this planned. I pre-recorded this episode to let you all know, that this was how it's going to be this week. So, now we get into the final topic of this week's episode, ladies and gentlemen, and that is none other than race picks. I know I don't do the drum roll as of late, but it's back. I returned it. You're welcome. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have all three National Touring Series running this weekend, but it's not in the typical order that you would typically see. So, the Xfinity Series and Cup Series all travel down to Daytona Beach for their second annual trip to the Daytona International Speedway. By the time you're watching this, tonight it is the Wawa 250 presented by Coca-Cola for the NASCAR Xfinity Series. They still have 3 races to go before their playoffs begin for their championship run. My pick to win the Xfinity Series race at at Daytona for the Xfinity Series. It's a very tricky pick because, there's some decent super speedway racers out there, but one guy that really comes to mind, and he's just fighting. He's been fighting for that first career win, and he's been so close so many times. He even got close this past Saturday at Watkins Glen. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to see Sheldon Creed become an Xfinity Series winner this Friday night at Daytona. So, yeah, that is my pick to win. Sheldon Creed is going to get his first career Xfinity Series win. That's just my gut feeling. He came close to winning at Talladega, which was the last super speedway race for them. He finished second to Jeb Burton. I was in attendance for that race. But, Sheldon Creed is going to pick up his first career Xfinity Series win for Richard Childress Racing. Then we have the Cup Series race at... Actually, let me do the Truck Series race first because I want to save the best for last. So, obviously, the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series are going to be racing their second race of their playoffs, but for the first time in over a decade and a half, they are returning to the Milwaukee Mile. So, the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series tours to Milwaukee, Wisconsin for the first time since 2009, 10. I remember the last time they went there. I vividly remember Ron Hornaday actually winning that race. My little 4-year-old self remembers the 33 truck doing burnouts on TV. So, yeah, that's how I remember. But, yeah, that was the last time that the Truck Series had ever visited the Milwaukee Mile. Now they have headed back for the first time in a while. So, who do I think is going to win the second playoff race for the Truck Series? Me personally, I am going with the driver who I mentioned earlier, and he is going to continue his last hurrah with GMS Racing, and I'm going to pick Grant Enfinger to win the Truck Series race at Milwaukee Mile. So, Grant Enfinger already 2 wins so far this year, and he's going to advance into the second round by getting his third win of the year at Milwaukee Mile. So, Grant Enfinger is my pick. Now, we get to the biggest race of the weekend. Saturday night, under the lights, at Daytona, 400 miles. It is the Coke Zero Sugar 400, the final race before the 2023 NASCAR Cup Series playoffs begin. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is it. This is where it all comes down to. What happened after this race? 16 drivers are going to be competing for a championship, but only one of those drivers will be there hoisting the trophy at the end of the season in Phoenix, Arizona. But for now, who do I think will win the season finale at Daytona? If you ask me who I think is going to get the regular season championship, I'm going to say Truex by some form of tenacity is going to get those 22 points and clinch the regular season championship. However, as for the race winner, I have thought long and hard about this, and it's, I wouldn't say the most obvious pick in the world, but he's due for another win, I would say. And he's a great super speedway racer, and he's won on a super speedway multiple times. And even before his 2022 winless streak, this was the race where he last won at. So, ladies and gentlemen, for my 2023 Coca-Cola Zero Sugar 400 winner, I am going to go with Ryan Blaney. I truly believe that Blaney could get it done at Daytona again, so I'm going to go with my gut feeling on this one and pick Ryan Blaney to win. So, yeah, look out for the number 12 Team Penske Ford Mustang, ladies and gentlemen, as Ford is currently on a roll right now with both RFK and Furman Motorsports, and maybe Team Penske. Maybe Team Penske wants some of that magic again, and Ryan Blaney is going to be there at the end to give him all that. So, yeah, Blaney is my pick to win at Daytona for the regular season finale. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that'll do it for this week's episode of the Checkers or Wreckers podcast. Let me know what you guys think of this week's episode down in the comment section below. And please be sure to subscribe to the channel for more episodes like this, ladies and gentlemen. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Checkers or Wreckers podcast, and I am your host, Carter Leonard. So long and goodbye.